That's right, let's bring some of this controversy over to my channel. You think I'm not ready for it? Bring it on! Oh, really? Damn. Okay. Last of Us Part 2 is, for some reason, one of the most controversial pieces of mainstream media in my lifetime. And why is that again? Sorry, I forgot. For God's sake, I feel like people were mad when the game was first announced. Last of Us 1 has one of my favorite endings to any story ever. Ending on just a look, and okay. And that's all that really needed to be said. You don't need to necessarily dive into what happens next. Everything's implied just through this one little interaction. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's all we needed. But it is an industry after all. So the sequel was announced and people were excited, but you know, skeptical. People were mad about everything. I swear to God, first it was people being mad before the game even came out. People were mad that Ellie was gay. People were mad that Joel died. People were mad about Abby taking up half the game. People were mad about the trailer, the actors, the Druckmann, everything. My God. But that was 5 years ago. And now, with the power of hindsight, I'm sure they can... Oh, boy. Season 1 overall I feel like was good with great moments. You know, the effects look good, a lot of the spectacle and the set pieces you remember from that first game are in here and they're adapted well. But overall I feel like they didn't spend enough time on the core relationship. So in a way, while it succeeded at a lot of the surface level things, it kind of failed when it came to developing that core relationship. By the time we got to that last episode, I felt like Joel and Ellie didn't know each other the way they did in that game. So overall I felt like it was super rushed. Well performed, effects looked good, however, I think the priorities weren't in the right places. And that brings us into Season 2, the story we all know and love. So the first thing I want to get out of the way is the casting. While initially I thought it was kind of stunt casting Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, two actors known for their performances in HBO's other enormous show, Game of Thrones, I felt like it was a case of HBO trying to keep their work a little bit in-house. Maybe it wasn't 100% the best choice for these roles. And I just want to say I was 100% wrong when it comes to Pedro Pascal as Joel. What Pedro brings to Joel in this is a different take than the game Joel, a different take than what Troy Baker brings to the role, where Pedro Pascal's Joel is a little more in touch with his feelings. He's a little more sensitive. He goes to therapy, for God's sake. And there's more of kind of this desperation rather than this stoicness that the Troy Baker Joel seems to have on all the time. It's a different interpretation, but not one that completely uproots the character. It's just kind of the nuances of the performance that bring out a different side of how he is written, and I feel like that was really cool to see. We even get a little more elaboration on Joel's past. We get to see his dad, we get to see his relationship with Tommy a little bit more, and those are elements that I really appreciated and thought makes sense when you're expanding this story to a different medium. Let's flesh out some of these things we didn't get to see in the game a little bit. I mean, Pedro Pascal is one of those actors where I feel like he's constantly stunt casted in all these different roles. I don't know how I feel about him as Reed Richards. I don't think he's super right for that role either. But I think he's just good enough of an actor where he can always bring something new to the role and kind of defy that stunt casting. I mean, there's one scene in this in particular where if you're just looking at the performance and you take the writing out of it, Pedro rips your goddamn heart out in some of these conversations he has with Ellie. Pedro Pascal continues to fucking astound me as Joel, and you really feel his presence kind of looming over everything, even after he exits the show. Now, the other side of this coin is Bella Ramsey, and Bella Ramsey is a presence that certainly gets people, let's say, riled up online. If you don't like Bella, you're a transphobe. If you do like Bella, you're a woke culture warrior. I think it's a little ridiculous how radicalized people are getting. I do not think Bella is above criticism. I don't think anybody is above criticism, except me, of course. I will say, officially, carved in stone and on the record, I think Bella Ramsey does a good job with the material they are given. I think there's a lot of weird, unnecessarily hateful stuff circling around them, and it's kind of a lot to get into. From what I can gather, it stems from her not looking like the game counterpart, or that she's ugly or can't act. I think it all comes down to one thing, and that's charisma. Game Ellie has this attitude, has this charisma that's undeniable, and it's hard to not constantly be comparing the two. Ellie's a little girl that broke your fucking finger! I've tried to take the performance as standalone as best I can, trying to keep Game Ellie out of my mind, but I gotta say, even as a standalone performance, there's just something missing there. There's just a fire behind her eyes. There's I don't know what you want to call it, a rebellious anger that's just not there in the show. A great example is in the game after Joel gets clubbed by Abby. Ellie has a quick morning sesh around his house, walks around, is sad for a bit, smells his jacket, and then a switch flips and immediately she goes off to get revenge. People are trying to stop her and they can't. She has initiative, she's trying to get some shit done, where the show takes a lot more of a meandering approach. After Joel's death, there's a lot more diplomacy, there's a lot more kind of sitting around twiddling your thumbs, characters discussing what they should do next, and oh, is this right, and the morality of this, that, and the other thing, where it's funny because in a way the 15, 16 hour long game feels tighter than the 7 hours we got in this season. And all of this just makes her seem less impulsive, less reckless, and less like Ellie. In Season 1, the performance didn't bother me as much, but in Season 2, Bella has the unfortunate task of acting alongside a lot of really charismatic actors. Best example is Isabella Merced, who plays Dina, is one of the most instantly likable, charismatic characters on the show right now. Unfortunately, it really makes Bella's Ellie seem that much more of a sourpuss standing next to this ball of energy the whole season. I also think that Bella's performance, unfortunately, kind of bleeds into how much I care about some of these core relationships. Ellie and Dina's relationship, one of the pillars of this season and the story going forward, is something that I kind of just don't buy. I can understand why Ellie would be attracted to Dina, but I really don't understand why Dina would like somebody like Ellie. They just don't do a good job of showing how the two kind of puzzle pieces fit when it comes to their relationship, and it makes me not really buy it going forward. So I think Bella does an okay job. There's just something clearly missing there. It might be a case of miscasting, but honestly, it would be hard for anybody to kind of get me to care with the way that she is written. Ellie in this season is written like a 6-year-old. When people disagree with her, she throws a tantrum. When people don't follow her around or do what she says, she immediately blows up on them. And it's hard to like a character who is just throwing tantrums all the time. One thing the show does also is it does its side characters so dirty. Tommy's relegated to like a Disney dad being like, no, you can't go out there, it's too dangerous out there. Jesse gets even less to do than he had in the game, if you can believe that, and by the season finale they ruin his character too. Take the example from the game where he finds out about Ellie and Dina's relationship, he finds out about the kid, and it's just this quick little interaction. You know, Ellie respects him enough not to lie to him, and he respects Ellie enough to not throw a little friggin' bitch fit about it. Whereas in the show, they just kind of do the typical trope thing. It really feels like you're twisting these characters into becoming these teenage angsty archetypes just so you could have a little more drama before the end of the season. And it really simplifies his character in a way that is not helpful to getting us to like him right before he gets shot in the face. That and all of Abby's team might as well be cardboard cutouts with a big shrug face drawn on them. They're nothing. They're useless. And she didn't even kill the PS Vita girl. What the hell? All she said was wheel and wail. What could that mean? What does that mean? If she's getting beaten to death with a pipe, why the fuck would she say wheel, wail, wheel, wail? Why would she not just say, yeah, Abby's in the aquarium, please stop beating the shit out of me? And it just goes to show there are lots of little changes like that all season that don't feel like improvements, they just kind of feel like being different for the sake of different. And now we get to Abby. Abby and her weird 90210 Degrassi friggin' friend group. I did not like Abby this season. While Abby in the game is definitely not a fan favorite, at least you can kind of understand where she's coming from, right? She's a one-woman revenge machine, and everything she does is with the one goal of murdering Joel with a golf club. I don't get that at all. I should be scared of Abby. I should be afraid of Abby. Instead, she just kind of looks like, you know, an angsty teenager, and I just don't buy it. I don't believe she means business. You know, the speech that she gives to Joel, they expand a little bit on that, and I don't think adding more dialogue in that death scene improved it. I liked in the game how Joel was like, alright, shut up, cut to the chase. And while they eventually give Pedro that line, it's after she already dumps all this exposition at him. Her revenge mission to kill Joel in the show comes across as a lot more immature, naive, and childish than it does in the game. It was a good episode. I guess I just didn't realize that giving The Last of Us the HBO treatment was turning Joel's death scene into a Game of Thrones battle episode. I mean, it was cool. You know, I like Tommy defending Jackson. I thought that was a nice addition, though I do miss him being there when his brother is killed. I don't think that having Dina there added anything, especially if they're just going to knock her out immediately. Again, change for the sake of change. It was a well-done episode. I think I'm just wondering if this whole big zombie battle distracted from the main event. This whole season has really been a victim of some bad writing. There were seriously moments in the series where I was getting like late season Walking Dead vibes, which is not what I should be getting for my prestige HBO drama. Oh, the zombies are evolving. That's stupid. Don't do that. So it's a shame because Last of Us Part 2 is a story that could have used a second draft. It could have used a revision, and I think that this season was the perfect opportunity to go in and fix some of these things, namely the pacing. You know, I'd be very interested to see a kind of simultaneous parallel story between Abby and Ellie throughout the whole story rather than doing this weird janky thing that they did in the game. And if you look at it, a lot of people quit after this moment. People don't want to follow Abby, this character that they hate. And I think that the game was really unsuccessful in what they set out to do, which was to try to get you to empathize for Abby. So to see the show trying to do the same thing in the same way that failed already in the game is a little bit surprising and disappointing. I know we'll get a lot more of Abby in season 3, and honestly, I don't know anybody that's excited to watch a 3rd season of this. Coming off of this season, more Abby is not what I wanted. I also think it's really funny that they take the low point of the 2nd game and treat that like the exciting cliffhanger for the end of this season. I don't know anybody that saw that and was like, hell yeah, ooh, interesting. Like, no, don't bring us back to Seattle Day 1. Please, 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 you fucking idiot. So overall, it's a season with some strong performances, but ultimately the writing really dragged it all down, and it's disappointing to see that they didn't take some of these opportunities to improve the story that had so many problems in the past. Overall, it's funny because it kind of falls victim to the same criticisms a lot of people have of the 2nd game. We'll see if anybody comes back for season 3, but I anticipate it's going to lose a good chunk of its audience. But the writing and the pacing is really doing this show a lot of damage, and it's a shame because it does have some moments that I think are gems. It's funny because I feel like some of the best aspects of this show almost have nothing to do with The Last of Us. I mean, there was the 3rd episode of last season that focused entirely on new characters that ended up being dead once we caught up to them in our timeline, and it was great. It wasn't The Last of Us. I mean, there are some standouts this season. There's Jeffrey Wright, who plays Isaac, who brings that kind of intimidating factor that I was hoping for. In the few scenes he's given this season, he's such a standout, even though he does murder Josh Peck. Not cool, dude. Joe Pantoliano even shows up for a minor role. He does a great job, and there's a really nice moment between him and Joel. So it's funny because all the best elements of this show seem to come from stories that are almost tangential to The Last of Us. I'm almost wondering if it should have been an anthology show set in the universe of The Last of Us rather than this story. This show excels in all of the elements that aren't the actual story itself. Feels like a show that doesn't really want to be this show. It gets through the scenes from the game like their homework and then really expands upon some of this other lore stuff. Do your thing, show. You don't have to be what we want you to be. You could be whatever you want. So subscribe, click around, check some other stuff out, and see you next time.